Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Bhagavad-gita Satsang. My name is Hari-kirtana, and it is a great pleasure to be with you this evening and an honor to see that you are here spending your time with me. Welcome back to some of you who I see are in the live Satsang, who I haven't seen for a while. I'm very, very happy to see you. I'm very happy to see all of you who have been regularly tuning in. And if you are within the sound of my voice, would you do me the kindness of raising your hand in the little raise your hand gizmo thing? Thank you very much for your cooperation. Now I know that you can hear me, and now we will take care of the remainder of our housekeeping chores. You can adjust your audio settings up in the upper right-hand corner, as well as your viewing options. You don't have to concern yourself with your camera on your computer or your microphone, because you cannot be seen or heard by me, but I can be seen and heard, or heard, as is your preference, by you. And if you have a question, which I certainly hope that you will, or a comment during the course of our proceedings, please type it into the Q&A box. If one of you would be kind enough to type a rhetorical question or a meaningful statement into the Q&A box, just so that I know you can see it and you can use it, then that would be great. I'd appreciate it. Last week, in chapter 6 of the Yoga of Eightfold Mysticism, we spoke about the two kinds of oneness and characteristics of spiritual vision. We covered verses 27 through 32. And if you missed it, well, you can go back and listen to it or watch it in the archive. Tonight's program, as we head into the home stretch of chapter 6, we will look at Arjuna's doubts about the yoga of meditation. In case you have doubts about meditation or your ability, more specifically, to practice meditation, develop a meditation practice that is meaningful and steady, you're in good company, because Arjuna has doubts about his ability to do this as well. Krishna will then reply with some advice, his opinion as to how to overcome obstacles to a meditation practice, and specifically, we'll talk about ways to control the mind. Now, we've already discussed in previous episodes of this series the nature of the mind, understanding the mind, some keys to controlling the mind. We're going to look again at this topic, but this time from a slightly different angle, combine a couple of principles and techniques from our previous discussions. Krishna will also answer questions regarding the destination of someone who does not complete the path of yoga in a single lifetime, and give us some reassurance as to our ultimate success if we simply stay on the path. So we're going to cover verses 33 through 45. But first, let's revisit some of the elements of the structure of the story. There are three key elements that form the structure of a story, any story: the plot, character, and conflict. So in the Bhagavad-gita, the plot is yoga as a means to harmonize our conditional dharma with our constitutional dharma in order to find our dharma, which is to say, the best way for us to respond to our destiny. And we find in the Bhagavad-gita an archetypal karmic situation, a destiny that must be faced. And the lesson statement will be how to respond. What are we to understand about responding to our own destiny? The character, the main character, is Arjuna. He is the hero of our story. And the nature of his character is nobility. He's looking to do the right thing. And the conflict, fight or do not fight. What is the right thing to do? How should Arjuna respond to his destiny? Now, the whole point of the story is the transformation of the main character. So the plot provides a setting in which the character's response to the conflict results in a transformation. The transformation that Krishna has been taking Arjuna through has been a transformation through different paths of yoga. Arjuna's beginning position is in human life, which is to say that he is living according to dharmic principles, but his goal is the fulfillment of material desires. Specifically, he wants everyone to live happily ever after. And that's the problem he wants Krishna to solve. And Krishna changes the whole conversation, the whole frame of reference of the conversation out of the goal of the fulfillment of material desires to the goal of the realization of transcendental knowledge. And thus we move up the yoga ladder, first with karma yoga, then action yoga, then action informed by transcendental knowledge, jnana yoga. Now, Krishna is describing the process of Ashtanga yoga, and the objective that he's pointing Arjuna to is Paramatma realization, or realization of the localized aspect of the absolute truth residing within the heart of Arjuna and within the heart of every other being, which takes us beyond the realm of material nature into a transcendental position. At the end of our last session, one of the key verses that we spoke about was this one, 630. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor are they ever lost to me. Now, what makes this a pivotal verse is that it precedes, it comes right after this verse. An adept yogi sees the Supreme Self within all beings and sees all beings within the Supreme Self, hence the Paramatma of which we just spoke, present in the heart of all beings. Indeed, one who is truly linked to the Supreme by the process of yoga sees the same Supreme Self everywhere. So here it sounds as if Krishna is speaking about someone else, the Supreme Self. But here we see in this verse, he now identifies himself as being that Supreme Self within the heart of all beings. So the result, if we now come back to our yoga ladder, is that somehow or other, Bhagavan realization of the personal form of the Supreme Person, is somehow connected to Paramatma realization. Because Krishna, as we will see again in the verses that we are covering this evening, is referred to as Sri Bhagavan whenever he speaks to Arjuna. So the question arises, well, is Bhagavan realization automatically attained by Paramatma realization, or is it the other way around? Is Paramatma realization contained within the realization of Bhagavan? The Supreme Lord within the heart also gives you realization of the personal form of the Supreme Being, the unique personal form? Or is Krishna intimating something else about the progression of the yoga ladder. Feel free to share your thoughts on what that might be. So returning for a moment to the structure of the story. We're following Arjuna's transformation through the yoga ladder. He begins in a state of material consciousness, human life lived according to righteous principles, but still concerned with material affairs. And then doubt-based questions. And that's where we're at right now. Chapters 4 through 9 are a section where Arjuna's questions are doubt-based questions, and he's asking Krishna to dispel his doubts. And we're right mid-stride in this portion. Specifically, what we're going to see are Arjuna's doubts about the practice of meditation. Krishna is telling him, here's the process of meditation, the process of yoga, highly recommended. And Arjuna is thinking, I'm on a battlefield. I've got things to do. And something about this just doesn't seem quite right. So here's how we can pull this question into our own lives. Should we respond to conflict by going off to the forest and meditating? You could make a case for this. It's very tempting to get wrapped up in the affairs of the world. And if we do, will that mean we lose the opportunity for self-realization? Because instead of turning inward and engaging in our meditation practice and finding our way towards a condition of self-realization, instead we're busy thinking about what's happening in the world and how we're going to respond to it. What is our responsibility to the world? Should we just let nature take its course? Nothing we can do? Or should we engage our time in trying to make a difference in the world? How do these two things come together? Do they come together? In the modern yoga and meditation world, sometimes we hear this idea that the best thing you can do to help heal the world is to heal yourself. The best way to make a positive contribution to the world is to take care of your own personal development. If you become a better person by the practice of yoga, if you aspire to transcendence, then you take the whole world with you somehow. What do you think? If you have any thoughts about this, please go to the Facebook page, our Facebook group, Bhagavad-gita Satsang, and share your thoughts there. And if you're not currently a member of the Facebook group, you can go and request membership. It is specifically for people who are watching this series of classes, and I will see it and grant you membership. All right. So what we left off with last week was an adept yogi sees the Supreme Self within all beings and sees all beings within the Supreme Self. Indeed, one who is truly linked to the Supreme by the process of yoga sees the same Supreme Self everywhere. And for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor are they ever lost to me. So here's an interesting proposition here. The process of yoga, meditating on the Supreme Self, and who develops the spiritual vision to see the Supreme Self within all beings and sees simultaneously and paradoxically all beings within the Supreme Self, never lost, nor are they ever lost to me. This foreshadows Arjuna's doubt about what happens if someone is attempting to do this and is not entirely successful. So We will move into the translations of our verses for this week, and then we will go back and look at each verse in detail with some commentary. So here we go. We begin this week with chapter 6, text 33. Arjuna said, "O killer of the demon named Madhu, the system of mystic equanimity that you have described seems unsustainable for me. For the mind is restless and unsteady. The mind is so fickle," this is text 34. "The mind is so fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and powerful, O Krishna, that to subdue the mind would be more difficult than controlling the wind." Text 35. Krishna replies, "O mighty armed one, the restless mind is undoubtedly difficult to control. However, O son of Kunti, such control can be achieved by suitable practice and by detachment." Text 36. "In my opinion, self-realization is indeed difficult for one whose mind is unrestrained. But one who controls the mind and endeavors by appropriate means is assured of success." Text 37. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destiny of an unsuccessful transcendentalist who takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later falls away from their practice due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain the perfection of yogic mysticism?" Text 38. "O mighty armed Krishna, does one who strays from the path of transcendence, achieving neither spiritual nor material success, perish like a dissipated cloud without any position in either world?" Text 39. "This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. Other than you, there is no one to be found who can remove this doubt." Text 40. The Blessed Lord said, "O son of Pritha, a transcendentalist does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the next. My dear friend, one who is sincerely engaged in such auspicious activities is never overcome by misfortune." Text 41. "One who falls from the path of yoga takes a celestial birth, and after many years of enjoyment, is born into a righteous or aristocratic family." Text 42. "Otherwise, one who is unsuccessful after practicing yoga for a long time takes birth in a family of learned transcendentalists who are endowed with great wisdom. Indeed, such a birth is very rare in this world." Text 43. "On taking such a birth, one reconnects to the spiritual intelligence they cultivated in their previous life, and once again strives for complete perfection, O son of Kuru." Text 44. "By virtue of the practice that has carried over from their previous life, they are spontaneously attracted to yogic principles. Such a transcendentalist, who merely inquires about yoga, transcends the ritualistic recitations of worldly mantras." Text 45. "By sincere endeavor and perseverance, one becomes cleansed of all impurities, and after many births of such practice, ultimately attains the supreme goal." So as you can see, Krishna is taking a very long-term approach to success in yoga. You may recall that the very first proposition Krishna offers to Arjuna for his consideration as he reframes his experience of his situation is that we are eternal spiritual beings having a temporary material life in a temporary material body. And that as one passes from childhood to youth to old age, one similarly passes to another body when the body we currently are in is no longer able to sustain our consciousness. Obviously, there's a connection here between this idea of the transmigration of an eternal self through a series of temporary material bodies and the practice of yoga extended over a series of multiple lifetimes. As we go through each of these verses individually, I can share a little something from my personal experience in a couple of areas that Krishna is addressing here. So back to verse 33. Oh, Jessica, thank you for your comment. Grist for the mill. All right, so let's get into the details of both the grist and the mill. We begin. Arjuna says, O killer of the demon Madhu, another name for Krishna, Madhusudana, the system of mystic equanimity that you have described seems unsustainable for me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So some yoga, some equal yoga, mysticism, or spiritual practice, translated as mystic equanimity, which is to say that in order to see with the kind of equal vision that Krishna has consistently encouraged Arjuna to see with, or the kind of spiritual vision he is encouraging him to develop in order to enable him to see with equanimity all living beings, there has to be some kind of spiritual practice that supports, enables and supports this kind of vision. And Arjuna's thinking, I don't know if I can do this, which may resonate with you. I know it resonates with me that sometimes it seems impossible to do, or certainly to perfect. The ability to see everyone with equal vision can be extremely challenging. This particular process that Krishna is describing of extraordinary pranayama, very, very elevated practice of control of the life force, offering the outgoing breath into the ingoing into the outgoing, essentially a suspension of breathing for the sake of extending the life force while one mechanically engineers the ascension of life force through the body from bottom to top, exercising such extraordinary control of the mind, control of the senses, living apart from society, observing strict celibacy, living in the forest, natural setting, totally off the grid. That seems to Arjuna to be impractical. And it may seem to you that that's impractical, that you're just not going to be able to orient your life in this way. So it's a reasonable doubt. In fact, one might conclude that for our time, place, and circumstance, the system of yoga that Krishna is describing in this section of the Bhagavad-gita is impossible to execute, not suitable for us in this time, place, and circumstance. In text 34, Arjuna continues. The mind is so fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and powerful, O Krishna, that to subdue the mind would be more difficult than controlling the wind. So Krishna has been telling Arjuna, control your mind with spiritual intelligence. And Arjuna's response is, the system that you have given me to develop this kind of spiritual intelligence and spiritual vision seems like something I just really can't do. Not only is the particular process of Ashtanga yoga sounding like something Arjuna cannot do, even though earlier he said, you know, maybe I should just go off to the forest and blow off this battle and just meditate, live as a mendicant. Now he's hearing what's actually involved. And it seems not particularly practical for him. You know, it's just not his nature. He's having this realization that his nature doesn't really allow for that kind of yoga practice. But also there's another problem, the equal vision problem, which is that Arjuna doubts that he can see his friends and his enemies as the same. Krishna is urging Arjuna to fight. That means he has to get angry at his enemies, because you can't fight effectively if you're not angry to some degree. And yet, at the same time, Krishna says, see them with equal vision. His older brother, Yudhisthira, Dharma personified, is the most noble person he knows. And his arch enemy Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra leading the armies on the other side, is basically the worst person on earth. How to see equally two different personalities? So this is part of the challenge that Arjuna is facing here. And one of the doubts that he has, that first of all, he can't do the process of yoga, that he can't execute the process of yoga Krishna is recommending. And even if he did, Krishna is asking him to fight a battle while having equal feelings about everybody on the battlefield, friends and enemies. The whole thing just seems totally bewildering to Arjuna. Which brings us to Krishna's reply and the verse that we will chant this evening. So if you are new to the satsang, then the way this works, I chant one line at a time. You chant the line back. I'll give you time to do that. And if you're not familiar with transliterated Sanskrit, here's a little guide to the diacritical marks that give you pronunciation cues. The accent mark or apostrophe over an S indicates a pink noise SH sound. That is to say, a sh sound from the back of your mouth, as opposed to a sh sound, white noise sound, SH in the front of your mouth. A bar over a vowel indicates an elongated and open version of the vowel, E or A, as opposed to I or A. A dot over an M or an N indicates that we close the lips in front and the back of the tongue to the back of the roof of the mouth, so as to almost wrap your mouth around a little walnut. Because it has kind of a nasally sound to it. A C is pronounced as a CH. In Sanskrit transliteration, if you want an S sound, you get an S. If you want a K sound, you get a K. So what is a C to do? It's to be a CH sound, ch. And a dot under an R is a hard R sound, ra, as opposed to r. Here you go. I chant, you chant back. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Samshayam Mahabhaho Manodur Nigraham Shalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Chagriyate. All right. Translation. Oh, before our translation, two key words in this verse, abhyasena and vairagyena. Suitable practice and appropriate detachment. So we're going to take a look at those two words in particular as we go a little deeper into this verse. The Blessed Lord said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So let's take a deeper look at this. What do we mean by suitable practice? There are some simple things that we can do in order to create a setting, an external situation that provides an environment that's conducive for success in meditation. And then there's the internal practices, state of mind that we can enter into. Here's just three simple things that if we were to do them once a day, every day, for some period of time, that would generate enough momentum in order to build a steady practice. So the first thing is what you're doing right now. Listen to something from the Bhagavad-gita. Hearing is the first process of yoga in general and devotional yoga in particular. Bhakti yoga begins with hearing. And you may recall that Bhakti yoga resides at the top of the yoga ladder in the Bhagavad-gita. That is the direction that Krishna is taking Arjuna in, and by extension, taking us in. So, begin with hearing. If we hear just a little bit, something of transcendental knowledge from a text like the Bhagavad-gita, every day, just little drops of text, then that orients us in a spiritual direction, provides a foundation. Then the second thing we can do is mantra meditation for a set period of time, or if you have beads, a set number of times. So, for example, I have a chair right over here, and that's where I pop myself down every morning, first thing, to engage in mantra meditation. I like to do it early in the morning because that is a great way to start the day. And these are my beads. So just a quick bit of mantra meditation, just how I do it. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, we get this same idea that mantra, he recommends the mantra Om, chanted repetitively, japa. So this is called japa mala, or japa beads, meditation beads. So for the repetition of the mantra. So I hold my beads in between my thumb and my middle finger. I have this poof bead Vishnu bead that I don't chant on. That just tells me where my starting point is. And I chant my mantra on each bead, complete mantra. Now, I don't chant Om. I chant the Hari-Krishna mantra. Later in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna will repeat on a couple of occasions that of Vedic mantras, he is the mantra Om. Just as Krishna is identical with the Paramatma, the Supersoul, the Supreme Lord within the heart, he is also identical with the transcendental sound vibration Om. And one can chant Om, or one can chant one of Krishna's names or a Krishna mantra. So I chant the Hare Krishna mantra. I chant the whole mantra on my bead, and then I go to the next bead and I chant the next complete mantra, and so on until I get all the way around to the middle bead, and then I go back the way I can. And I do this for a set number of rounds on the beads, as opposed to a set number of time, a set amount of time. If you are beginning a meditation practice, you can do it either way, and it might be easy for you to go get a set of beads and go around them once or twice, or however many times you feel inspired to, or you can say, I've got a set amount of time. I've got 10 minutes, and I'm going to chant my mantra for 10 minutes with the beads or without the beads. Anyway, the idea is repetition. Mantra meditation is the recommended form of meditation for Ashtanga yoga. And the practice of meditation for a specific amount of time every day, or a specific number of times on a set of beads, is the way to work with whatever time you've got and build a steady practice. The important part is that you do it for the same amount of time, or the same number of times every day. Better still, do it at the same time every day. And if possible, do it in the same place every day. Have a place that is particular, that is specifically set up for this purpose. So that's a suitable practice for busy people who want to get into a steady meditation practice. Keep it simple. And here's the thing. If you do these three things, hear something from the Bhagavad-gita, chant mantras for a set amount of time or a set number of times, that by itself, over time, becomes a great way. You'll see that it actually helps to bring the mind slowly under control. It trains the mind in a habit. Now here's the third thing that you can do. If you can, once a day, find a spiritually advanced person to spend some time with. You may know someone personally that you can do this with. You can find people on the internet who you think of as being qualified as spiritually advanced people, and you can hear something from them. Many such people have lectures or chant on the lead kirtans on the internet. You can download things if you don't know someone personally, but one way or another, find a spiritually advanced person to hang out with. The result of spending time with someone who's made some spiritual advancement is they'll remind you of your spiritual purpose. Remembering the person that you are supposed to be gearing your meditation, orienting your meditation towards, will happen when you associate with someone who is further along the path of that process than you are, who's fully engaged in the process of meditation as described in the Bhagavad-gita. Which brings us to detachment. What do we mean when we say appropriate detachment? So vairagya means detachment of the mind from material life and engagement of the mind in spiritual life. So here's a couple of ways that you can do that. One, create a sacred space in your home. So this would be the place where you go to engage in your meditation practice. And when we consider that the idea here is to develop vision that allows us to see the form of the Supreme Person within the heart of all beings, find a image of the Supreme Person that you can put on your sacred space, create a little altar, find an image of the Supreme Being that really inspires you, and give that image a central position in your sacred space, and then make an offering on your altar. You can offer flowers, you can offer incense, you can offer food. Before you eat, when you prepare your food, put it on your altar, make that an offering first. Serving the Supreme Person through the medium of an image in a sacred space is a totally legitimate way to spiritualize your daily activities. This also does something else that I think is pretty important and can be really meaningful. By setting up a sacred space and actually bringing a picture or having a deity form of some kind on your altar, what you're doing is you're inviting the Paramatma, the Lord of the heart, to step out of your heart and take up residence in your home. A lot of times, our hesitation to engage in meditation on a personal conception or personal form of the Supreme Being is fear. Either fear of the Supreme Being, who we don't have a favorable orientation towards due to never having seen an example of a person with absolute power who didn't use that power for some ulterior and exploitive and hurtful motive. And therefore it's as every other person that we've ever met. Reasonable. This helps us to overcome this fear and disbelief, this doubt. Just as Arjuna has doubts, we have doubts, and this may very well be one of yours. This is a leap of faith. Asking the Supreme Person to come take up residence in your home in order to cultivate that confidence that you're dealing with a person who is not only all-powerful, but all-benevolent. Quite the exception to the rule. The other reason we might be afraid of engaging in this relationship is because we may not feel ourselves worthy of that relationship. As we will see as we move through the Bhagavad-gita, the description of this Supreme Person is pretty awe-inspiring and big, very big. And we have to, with how small we are, and perhaps how inadequate we feel to be in a relationship with someone so big and perfect. Well, this invitation for the Supreme Paramatma within one's heart to pop out and be in your home will also be a way for us to work on that, to get comfortable with the idea that the Paramatma, the Lord within our heart, who has accompanied us on our sojourn through the material world since time immemorial, actually thinks more highly of us than we might think of ourselves. The last element of, or the second element of detachment, rather, that is to say, detachment of the mind from material life and engagement of the mind in spiritual life, is to take your mind to a sacred place, or make your home a sacred place. If your home is a sacred place, then you don't have to go anywhere. And engage in the previous four practices of hearing, transcendental knowledge, chanting, transcendental sound, remembering the transcendental person by associating with those who are meditating on the supreme transcendental person, and engaging in some service to the supreme person through the medium of an image or deity form on your altar. These four things: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving. And doing those things in a sacred space will have a wonderful cumulative effect insofar as controlling the mind is concerned. If you have any questions about this, please go ahead and pop your question into the Q&A box. And while I wait and look for any questions you may have, I'm going to continue to move through the verses that we have left for this segment. Verse 36. In my opinion, self-realization is indeed difficult for those whose minds are unrestrained. So here we have the place of the yamas. Yama means to restrain. The purpose of the yamas, the 5 ethical directives, is actually to bring the mind under control for the sake of enabling the assimilation of transcendental knowledge and the concentration of the mind on an object of meditation. So it's not just about ethics from the standpoint of morality, it's about how accessing the complete scope of potential spiritual knowledge. But one who controls the mind and endeavors by appropriate means is assured of success. Well, that's very nice to hear. How long will it take to be successful? Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destiny of an unsuccessful transcendentalist who takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later falls away from their practice due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain the perfection of yogic mysticism?" O mighty armed Krishna, does one who strays from the path of transcendence, achieving neither spiritual nor material success, perish like a dissipated cloud without any position in the world? This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. Other than you, there is no one to be found who can remove this doubt. So these were verses 37, 38, and 39. So there are a lot of reasons why one may fail or fall away from practice. And I should know, because that's one of the things that I'm good at least that's according to my track record, is falling away from practice. If you saw the Facebook live video I put up on Tuesday, you have already heard that I've had a meditation practice for the better part of the last 40 years or so, which means that the better part of the last 40 years has been the part where I've maintained my meditation practice. The illusory energy can be extremely tempting. And the illusory energy is something that is an active principle. It's not just a passive thing. So whenever someone tries to escape from the web of illusion that we are currently entangled in, the illusory energy actually tries to defeat the yogi by offering allurements. Oh, you said you're going to give up all your material desires. Well, how about this material desire? Don't you think you'd be happy if you fulfilled this material desire? You know, it's possible. You can do it if you try. All you have to do is give up your meditation practice, and instead of spending all your time and energy doing that, pursue this material desire, and then you'll be happy. That's what happens. And, you know, I fell for that. So this is called yogachalita manasaha, deviation from the transcendental path. And at least in my case, I feel fortunate that, you know, even when my material desires were fulfilled, I had an understanding that, or an experience that, oh, they're not as fulfilling as I thought they would be. And fortunately, I was able to return to my own spiritual practice. So here I am now. I'm not a 100% spiritual success. I'm working on it. I'm definitely not a material success either. I kind of never really felt all that jazzed about any of the material worldly careers that I developed for myself after I walked away from my spiritual practice in my 20s. I, you know, found my way into a career of sorts, but, you know, I was never that jazzed about them, and therefore I was never all that successful at them. So here I am in this kind of nowheresville, neither materially successful nor have I become completely 100% spiritually successful. So what happens next? What if I die tomorrow? Is it all for nothing? Just great big waste of time and I'm just sort of nowhere? This is what Arjuna is asking, because he is not confident in his ability to execute this process of yoga. So here's what Krishna has to say about this. O son of Prita, a transcendentalist does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the next. My dear friend, one who is sincerely engaged in such auspicious activities is never overcome by misfortune. The key takeaway in this verse is Krishna using the phrase, my dear friend. I was speaking just a few moments ago about our fear of the supreme person, the Lord of the heart, due to not having faith in the possibility that any person could be benevolent if they are also all-powerful. And here, Krishna is expressing his affection to his dear friend. And by the way, the Bhagavad-gita is not just for Arjuna, it's for us. So this phrase, my dear friend, that's intended for us. An expression of Krishna's feelings towards us. And then the assurance. One who is engaged in this process never meets with misfortune. We will come back to how it is that one can be engaged in the practice of yoga, and yet, at least from a material standpoint, misfortune still happens. It's not that, you know, our lives all of a sudden become materially perfect. So we will return to this promise and what this actually means in future classes. Text 41. One who falls from the path of yoga takes a celestial birth, and after many years of enjoyment, is born into a righteous or aristocratic family. So the first part of this, a celestial birth, you go to heaven. In the conception of cosmology that we find in the Bhagavad-gita, heaven is a place that you can go to. but it's temporary. There's a difference between the heavenly realm and the spiritual realm. The heavenly or celestial realm is a place in the material world. Keep in mind that our universe is a multidimensional place. We can only see about 5% of it. We don't know what's in the other 95%. That's called dark matter. Could be. In any event, one on the path of yoga takes birth in a righteous or aristocratic family, which is to say, a family situation that somehow or other is conducive for continuing on the path of yoga. And this is what happens to someone who has made modest progress. The next verse, it deals with what happens for someone who has made a lot more progress. Text 42, otherwise one who is unsuccessful after practicing yoga for a long time takes birth in a family of learned transcendentalists who are endowed with great wisdom. Indeed, such a birth is very rare in this world. The one who takes birth in a situation where their family is also engaged in the practice of yoga and is prioritizing the practice of yoga over other stuff. That is a great head start. Just as someone who has cultivated a desire to be a musician takes birth in a family of musicians, just as someone who develops an aptitude for teaching takes birth in a family where, you know, your parents are teachers. You can pick any natural inclination and find that someone takes their birth in a family that encourages that kind of thing. So here, the same principle applies. So 43, upon taking such a birth, one reconnects to the spiritual intelligence they cultivated in their previous life and once again strives for complete perfection. It's like a bank account that you never make withdrawals on. You just keep putting money in the bank and it's there for you in future lives to draw upon. 44, by virtue of the practice that has carried over from their previous life, they are spontaneously attracted to yogic principles. Such a transcendentalist who merely inquires about yoga transcends the ritualistic recitations of worldly mantras. So there are ritualistic sacrificial ceremonies and mantras one can chant in order to gain a material benefit. We find these in different Vedic scriptures. So this is what Krishna is referring to. We can also think of any number of worldly mantras now that the word mantra has been co-opted into very modern Western usage. And finally, verse 45, by sincere endeavor and perseverance, one becomes cleansed of all impurities, and after many, many births of such practice, ultimately attains the supreme goal. So if you feel like you're not really making a whole lot of progress, don't worry. The only way you can fail is by quitting. And whatever progress you make stays with you forever. Remember back in the second chapter, verse 40, Krishna says there is no loss or diminution. And even a little progress on this path can save one from the greatest danger, which is the danger of falling back down into the realm of animal life, where one has no such opportunity to make further progress on the path of yoga. So that brings us to the end for this evening. Thank you very much. We talked about Arjuna's doubts about meditation, overcoming obstacles, and the destination of the unsuccessful yogi, and the assurances that success will eventually be ours if we just keep on keeping on. If you have any questions, then I will still stick around and do my best to provide you with a satisfactory answer. If you have questions after the fact, please write to me, Hari, H-A-R-I, at Hari-kirtana.com. That's where you can find me, and that's where I hope I will find you. If you do not already have a copy of my book, you can still get one at Amazon or at IndieBound if you want to support your local bookstore. If you have my book and you've read my book and you like my book, In Search of the Highest Truth, Adventures in Yoga Philosophy, I would be so grateful if you would hop on over to Amazon or Goodreads and write a little review. Reviews really, really matter. This is an old screenshot. I've got a few more reviews than that, but everyone counts, and I would be very grateful if you would do that for me. Next week, we will conclude Chapter 6, the Yoga of Eightfold Mysticism. We'll review the chapter, take an overview, and take a good close look at Krishna's opinion, his final opinion with regard to the highest yogi, the most advanced of transcendentalists. We will focus in on verses 46 and 47. And that's what I got for you this evening. Thank you very, very much for spending your time with me. I'm always very, very happy to see you. And I'm very happy to know that you were there after the fact. For those who are watching the recording, please remember to head on over to the Facebook group and share your thoughts on the earlier question of whether we respond to conflict by just doing our own inner work or by engaging with the world. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening or rest of your day, as the case may be. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a nice night.